Superman 2. Yeah, Superman 2 is a movie from 1980. Of course, the second installment of the Superman franchise. That is the Christopher Reeve Superman, which started with Superman, 1978. Christopher Reeve as Clark Kent / Superman, Margot Kidder as Lois Lane, Gene Hackman as Lex Luthor. Anyway, all those people come back for Superman 2. Superman 2 is the one with the villains. You know who I'm talking about. General Zod, portrayed by Terrence Stamp. Also Ursa, portrayed by Sarah Douglas. And Non, played by Jack O'Halloran. Okay, so we got all of our actors and our stars out of the way. Plot of this is some Kryptonian villains who were not on Krypton when it blew up, survived, and have made their way to Earth to take on Superman. And the first part of the movie is basically like a flashback of the first movie, establishing his origin, Clark Kent growing up, learning his powers, becoming Superman, saving the world from Lex Luthor and his evil plans. They show all that in a flashback, and you get that epic John Williams Superman music in there. So right after your introductory credits, we flash back to Krypton. And Krypton, I guess, very soon before it was destroyed. Now, there was a scene in the original Superman where Zod and his minions were banished, but they expand on that here, and I guess they elaborate on it a little bit, but not really, because the whole scene takes about a minute and a half, and that's committing the crime, getting caught for the crime, going on trial for the crime, and being sentenced all within a minute and a half. And they're immediately caught, and spotlight falls on them. Kryptonian elders appear above them, I guess like on video screens or holograms or something. Basically sentences Zod and his minions to be cast into the negative zone, which conveniently happens to be passing overhead, and they're shot via laser beam into the Phantom Zone, is what it's actually called, not the negative zone. Isn't that like Star Trek? Yeah, so they float away in their floating trapezoid, and they're in their space prison, and you know what I'm talking about, right? Meanwhile, back on Earth, Clark Kent and Lois Lane are still working together at the Daily Planet. Lois Lane's still unaware that Clark Kent is Superman, but then suddenly there's a crisis in Paris. There are some terrorists with a nuclear bomb at the Eiffel Tower, and they say they're going to detonate this bomb unless their demands are met. And Lois Lane goes to investigate, and she sneaks into the crime scene. She somehow gets on the bottom of the elevator. The elevator goes all the way to the top, and the bomb's going to go off. So Superman appears, and he rescues Lois Lane, and he takes the elevator with the bomb in it, and he launches it into space, where it coincidentally collides with the passing Phantom Zone with the criminals in it, and it blows it up, and they are free, and they start making their way to Earth. There's a shot of them like when they land on the moon and stuff, and they kick the shit out of a bunch of American astronauts. None other than Cliff Clavin is at the controls down in Houston, and he's like, "Hey, what are you clowns doing up there?" kind of thing. And meanwhile, they're getting smashed and choked by General Zod and Non. Sarah Douglas kicks some astronaut in the crotch, and he goes into orbit. Back on Earth again, Lois Lane and Clark Kent are on an assignment, and they're posing as honeymooners at Niagara Falls. And when they're viewing the falls, some really stupid kid is like, hanging on the railing over the falls. Nobody's watching him, so the kid falls in there, and Clark Kent has to quickly change into Superman and then swoop down and catch the kid. So Lois Lane is like, Clark Kent is never around when Superman's around. It's funny how that is. And she's starting to put it all together and realize that they're the same guy. And she's so positive of this that in the next scene, she actually throws herself into the Niagara River, expecting Superman to come and save her. Clark Kent is ingenious enough to use his Superman powers, but not change into Superman, and he creatively rescues her without revealing that he's Superman. Cut back to our villains, and they've arrived on Earth, and they land in a small town somewhere in the USA. They're blowing shit up all over the place. Back at Niagara Falls, Lois and Clark, they're talking about the day. She's drying her hair and stuff, and I really did believe that. I can't believe I thought you were Superman. And she's like, I feel like such a fool, and blah, blah, blah. And then some kind of little stumble or trip or accident happens. Clark ends up sticking his hand in the fireplace. Lois sees this, and she says, let me look at your hand, and it's perfectly fine, and he's not hurt at all. He reveals that, yes, I am Superman, and we've got a lot of talk about, and I'm in love with you, and blah, 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 and it's the Superman, Lois and Clark love story, right? So they decide to take off up to the Fortress of Solitude, and he's going to show her all the stuff of the Fortress of Solitude, and blah, 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 blah. And then back to the villains. Now they're kind of like kicking ass all over the place. And they eventually make their way to the White House, and they want Earth to kneel before Zod, and he's now the new ruler of this planet. And everybody's like, where's Superman? But he's up in the Fortress of Solitude getting on with Lois, I guess. And so, since he's so in love with Lois, he talks to his dead mom through the crystals or whatever at the Fortress of Solitude. And she says, you're going to have to lose your powers to get with this girl. Why? You have to truly become one of them. I think that's really a dumb plot twist. Superman says to Lois, let's live our lives as humans, and, we needn't worry about all this Superman world-saving stuff anymore. And he steps into the, red kryptonite chamber or whatever, or whatever the one that takes away his powers is, gets rid of his super red sun powers. Yeah, and then they venture back out into the real world, and they're at some diner, and there's some redneck idiot guy is just bullying everybody in the diner, and he comes and he bullies Clark Kent and actually beats him up. So Clark Kent knows what it's like to bleed now, and to be mortal and whatever. And then they get back to civilization, and they learn that, oh my god, General Zod, what the hell? And Superman has no powers anymore. Guess, got to hitchhike back up to this Fortress of Solitude and reverse the chamber or whatever, because Zod and his minions are attacking New York City, and they're even attacking the Daily Planet offices and, Jimmy Olsen and all that stuff. And meanwhile, during all of this, Lex Luthor escapes from prison, and he makes his way up to the Fortress of Solitude. This actually happened before Superman ever went there in this film. And he discovers some secrets, and I guess he kind of learns about the Fortress of Solitude and more about Superman and his weaknesses and stuff. And now he's working with the bad guys, and he's helping them to find and defeat Superman. And Superman, assumingly, went back to the Fortress of Solitude and reversed the process and got his powers back, and comes to Metropolis to, try and help stop the villains. And they fight, and they kind of are kicking his ass for a while, because there's 3 of them and only 1 of him. So Superman takes off, and he leaves. And they're like, oh my god, I can't believe what a coward. Well, really, he's just leading them away. So they're not going to hurt Metropolis anymore. So, of course, they're going to follow him, or they figure out where he's going to go. Because, of course, Lex Luthor tells them where the Fortress of Solitude is and takes them there. So they kidnap Lois Lane, and they confront Superman. And this is basically the climax of the movie. And so Superman says to them, I will bow to your demands, Zod, just as long as you let me live my life as a normal human being. And, we'll live under your rule and everything, but just give me a chance to be with Lois or whatever. So he voluntarily, apparently, steps into the crystal chamber, which will presumably take away his Kryptonian powers. Meanwhile, unbeknownst to the audience, Superman has reversed the effects of the chamber, meaning that he's going to be shielded inside from all the red sun radiation on the outside, which is going to take away the villain's powers. Basically, Lois Lane and Superman just easily beat the crap out of them. And they basically kill them all, because they all die and just fall in a hole, and that's it. Superman saves the day. Then, of course, he runs Luthor back to jail where he belongs. Meanwhile, Superman and Lois Lane still in love, but they realize that they're not happy this way. Basically, he's out there all the time saving the world, and, you know, she's kind of wants him for herself. And it's kind of weird and whatever, but she's all depressed. So Superman decides that he's going to use some previously unknown power, and he's going to kiss her, and this kiss gives her amnesia, and she totally forgets anything to do with the fact that Clark Kent is Superman, or that they just saved the world from General Zod and any of that stuff, and she's just like basically amnesia. Very convenient amnesia brought about by a kiss. Now Superman like using the Force to cloud the minds of whatever, and I don't know. Like, yeah, okay, laser beam eyes, sure, fine. He can even do the breath thing, and like blow away armies or whatever. And fly, and super strength. Okay, that's pretty much what I thought Superman had. But no, in here, now Superman has this like thing where he peels the S off of his chest and he throws it at the villains, and it like entraps them or something somehow. It's this big flexy PVC sheet or whatever, and I never saw that. I don't think even in a comic book. Well, maybe. They're always making up new stuff for Superman. It sounds like I have a lot of complaints about this movie, and I really don't. I found it a lot of fun. I liked Terrence Stamp as General Zod. I thought he was pretty interesting. It's like, why are we so scared of this skinny English guy and with this puffy pirate shirt on? You know, the big guy, I can understand. The guy's huge. Sarah Douglas, she's pretty nasty too. I really like her in the movie as well. Margot Kidder, I think, does a really good performance in here. I've always liked Lois Lane. She's very charismatic and generally a very interesting character. Clark Kent, Superman, portrayed perfectly fine by Christopher Reeve. Special effects are what they are. Music is 100%. Cinematography is good. The editing is good. The pacing of the story is really good. And the things that happen in it, some of it might be pretty silly, but it's all pretty epic and it's all pretty comic booky like I was looking for. I was pleasantly surprised when I saw Superman 2 in the theater back in 1980. And I think it still holds up. I was entertained all the way through Superman 2. I'm going to give Superman 2 a B+. It's probably my favorite Superman movie, but that's saying something because it only gets a B+. I guess I'm not really that big of a Superman fan, but I like this one because there's just enough of that cheesy, weird stuff in there, and that epic music. You know, I can't go any lower than a B+, but I can't really go A because it's Superman. Aren't you bored of Superman? Well, if you are, this is the least boring of them, at least to me. So until next time, everybody, have a good one.